Hi, folks, and welcome to Film Optimist, where we talk about all things film with a gratuitous dose of optimism. I'm your host, Seth Boyd,
I'm Megan Tierney.
and it is still our favorite time of year,
Oh,
Halloween, spooky season, ghosts galore, all of that fun stuff. And we're coming back with another classic from the 70s that
mhm.
Megan, I think, both watched for the first time pretty recently. This is one that I had on my radar for a long time. I finally watched it, and like is often the case for 70s horror movies, it turned out to be great, or at least really up my alley.
Uh-huh.
We're talking about the Stepford Wives from 1975, not to be confused with the remake from the early aughts. So,
hmm
Megan, you just watched this, I think, a couple days ago, so we're kind of on the same page
Okay.
for coming to this movie. Had you heard of it prior to my suggestion, and did you have any preconceived notions before watching it?
I think that I don't know if I had heard of it. I think I had seen the trailer and or just like a photo of Nicole Kidman in the second one. So I didn't know that was a remake. I
Sure.
it kind of felt like a remake, like even upon looking at it, but that's basically all I had. And only regarding like just the garb and stuff you could kind of I think it was a little
Right.
the feeling that it got is dystopian, and I think that's what this kind of partially is like dystopian sci-fi-ish, but that's basically the only
Mhm.
gist that I got from it. And I would say that's somewhat accurate for what the movie is, but I really like
Yeah.
the sci-fi element. Like it's a bit of a monster movie is what I'll say.
Yeah, there certainly is things are not as they appear in American utopia, suburbia.
hmm
Is and I don't know if it's not the first movie to do that, but it is a pretty iconic one that you kind of see referenced just in other media, TV shows or other movies, or even just like the kind of fashion of a little bit more old school
yeah.
looking garb, you know. And I will say this is kind of was largely in my mind too, because of the recent movie "Don't Worry, Be Darling," that
Yes.
frankly I have not seen yet. But
Oh, Seth.
hearing the description of it, is did you like it?
Well, no, well, I thought immediately of it too. I was really
Yeah,
like, I wanted to talk to you. I'm glad you brought it up. I wanted to talk to you about it.
because like I spoiled that movie for myself because upon hearing about it, I just thought, well, shouldn't I watch the quote unquote original first, Stepford Wives?
Yeah.
And my understanding is it's kind of better for some complicated reasons that we may or may not get into, but it was definitely a movie made recently that is, if not homage, definitely has Stepford Wives in mind. So I think it's kind of got me at least thinking about, well, sometimes there's a remake of a horror movie that is necessary, or sometimes it's we've
Yeah.
talked about John Carpenter's The Thing last year,
hmm
and by many accounts the original one is good, but it's not John Carpenter's The Thing. It's not
Sure.
the classic one we talk about. So I don't know, it can really be a mixed bag for how good is the original.
Yeah.
um, with horror, it's a strange genre in that way. Typically I think we're both kind of maybe anti-remake. Like, think about I just rewatched Francis Ford Coppola's version of Dracula last night,
Uh-huh.
Bram Stoker's Dracula, and that's a really fun, lush, wild style to it. That's all practical effects that just looks great,
Yeah.
and one of my preferred versions. But it's like, well, it's the original Dracula.
Yeah.
Is it Nosferatu? Is it the one from the 30s? Like, I'm pretty happy with remakes of that or other incarnations of it.
Or especially with horror too, it's like there's
Yeah,
so and well even just film in general, but horror especially, I think there's a lot of borrowing and a lot of just
sure.
inspiration, I guess, from how many times can you tell a ghost story or kind of thing, but like uh, and that's true of literature. That's true for me. That's true of like a lot of good cinema. I think just
Yeah.
it's not necessarily like a bad thing to, or you just we're never going to escape similar storylines, I guess, is what I'm realizing. But there's always a way to, what's amazing to me about film is that you can like innovate, and um it's your own chance to adapt things, and I really like adaptations. I really like you say, like it's fun to
Yeah.
explore history of these films and stuff. I'm really glad you brought up Don't Worry Darling, because yeah, I mean it pulled heavily, I thought, from the themes a lot of Stepford Wives. Like there
Uh,
was just a huge comparison, and people, so I don't. it was memeified a lot. People kind of shit on that movie pretty hard, and it was very entertaining. It was kind of I
Okay.
would say, even for Stepford Wives, it could have I thought Stepford Wives could be trimmed down. Don't Worry, Darling needed like 2 or 3 more passes of editing, is what is like the biggest takeaway
Oh,
I got.
really?
Literally with timing, but
Okay.
also some of the script felt like first drafts. Nobody looked at it. Like that was pretty surprising. But aesthetically, like the
Mm,
ideas were all there, and it was very like aesthetically driven
right.
film. And conceptual horror, I guess, too, was added to it. So like that psychological
Right.
element that I think is a part of Stepford Wives was there too. So it was just it was a comparison, like definitely that came up for
Yeah.
me.
Oh, good. I'm glad to hear that
Yeah.
because I'm glad you've seen it. I've
Yeah.
seen both, so I'm not just we're not just guessing here. But well, with that, what were your thoughts on Stepford Wives, and then kind of initial thoughts, like to dislike?
Yeah. Well, so like you say, right up my alley too, in that this is a kind of specific dystopian,
Mhm.
I would say, for women, for the idea of suburbia
Mm,
being kind of a trap, marriage being kind of a trap, the traditional housewife being a what would happen if a traditional housewife, um that becomes a horror element in and of itself. And a lot of
mm,
feminist theory going on, basically, is what I'm trying to get at. And that's a huge plot point of the
yeah.
film, and actually pretty overt theme, is that a the woman that moves from New York to Stepford, that's the name of the
Mhm.
town that they're in, the little very very affluent, from what it looks like, but still the 70s, you could probably
Yeah.
afford that when you're a a family, which is kind of always hard to
That's a
watch
good
for
point.
me. Yeah, yeah. But gorgeous green lawns, mansions, I would say, with tennis courts and all
Right.
that good stuff. So a woman or a family basically from New York moves there, and the wife starts to realize all the bumps in the night are actually caused by her husband joining this sort of men's literally men's club or men's association, I guess,
Mhm.
which, I mean, that's a bit of a talk about horror, but like an all men's association that
Yeah.
specific, and the caveat is that it's like literally men's only. Women are not allowed to come, and things
Right.
ensue from there, where it becomes increasingly obvious that her husband's being influenced by something of this men's group, and his ways are changing, and they're kind of bizarre. She meets them, and they're just not what she expects or likes at
Yeah.
all. And yeah, so all of like those horror elements are really, really nice. It's kind of like set up as almost like a thriller, because it's not like supernatural in any way to me, but
Yeah.
like it is still pretty pretty horrifying in that regard. I think a lot of like I can certainly see a lot of people relating to this, especially suburban America, Americana,
Right.
like women stuff going on like that. And
Mm,
from the 70s, it seemed very like time specific. It was this was my I think like this is my mom's era, and I think
right.
this would be the kind of horror that she like would glob onto, kind of. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned the very strong feminist note here, because apparently, at the time, several prominent feminist critics really liked it, while others thought it was just kind of over the top, or it was
Uh,
just kind of profiting off of it. It's like I don't think it was over the top.
no, no, that's funny.
And I think they kind of that happened. However, concerning thing that our main character Joanne notices is that all the wives in this town are maybe too much the perfect idea of a wife. They're beautiful. They're always doting with their husband. They're always cooking. They're taking care of the kids. They don't really seem to have a personality interest outside of that. And something sinister is going on in that. And it becomes increasingly clear that the women are not always like this. That some change has happened to them. And I'll just get this one out here now. They're being replaced by robots, is what's happening. They're
Mm-hmm.
being replaced with a copy of them that
That's right.
is the ideal woman. So there's a lot of terrifying things going on here, but you mentioned the suburbs, and I want to talk about that kind of first because like you do have the beginning of this movie is her Joanne looking longingly at her empty apartment that they're about to leave out of New York City,
Hmm.
and you have this suburbs versus the city thing right away where there's a she's a I think amateur photographer. It's her passion is what she's doing, so what she's good at, and she's kind of take a candid photo as they're packing up the car, and there's a guy walking by with a I think it's either a mannequin or a sex doll. I wasn't
Yeah.
quite clear, but the dad kind of becomes aware of this and said, "Well, that's why we're moving out of the city into the suburbs."
Hmm.
And um, before we go further, Megan, your thoughts on the suburbs versus the city? I think you know I have strong opinions, but one to me is much more frightening than the other.
Fair. Well, I think it really, so being in the Bay, being in the Bay Area of California, I have to preface it by that because I think it's a very specific thing. And I like as a child, I think growing up here, I'm like, for reference, I'm like 30 minutes outside of San Francisco.
Mhm.
As kids, we always would say we're gonna move to San Francisco. Like that's the thing. We're my
Right.
little 10-year-old friends would be like, well, we're gonna move to New York one day, like a big city. I'm very
Right.
glad personally that I'm now at a point in my life. Well, first of all, I think anybody will know that's just kind of, I would say literally almost unattainable these days, unfortunately, to get into SF. My sister
Yeah.
loves San Francisco. She's working there currently. Like, she could possibly swing it. Like, if you want to do it,
Right.
you could probably do it. But for me, I think like California Bay Area suburbia is just my home. I really glob onto it. And
Sure.
this is a very different suburbia, I would say, than like what's portrayed in Stepford Wives. That's to me like almost um that's a very just separate like concept to me from what
Right.
my California suburbia home is.
That's a good point. Yeah.
This would be more like
Because
something
yeah, I
in,
was raised in a suburb as well,
yeah.
but it was also I could walk to a store, you know?
That's right. That's what I think about is just
Yeah,
like well, and just access also to, we have every food type available. We don't have to go. I could hop into any
right,
city near me and have like get my Mexican food, get like Korean food, stuff like that. So that's
right,
I'm privileged in that way. And it's like it is a little bit more, the accessibility is there for me. That's why I love my personal suburbia because, well, also just, I mean, it almost gets political for me, but like getting into the city is terrible in terms of like transportation. I
sure,
think like the poor Bay is just failing in terms of like our rapid transit systems. Like it's just a lot of stuff like that. So we are car people
sure.
here. Like we are, I'm kind of hunkering down. I'm hunkering down in my suburbia. But specifically this suburbia.
Fair enough, because yeah, I think the suburbia that's in this movie that is kind of the suburbia that I fear is pretty
Yes.
far from your home and
Hmm.
from even like where I grew up. Like I grew up also in a suburb of the Bay Area in
Right.
Walnut Creek. It wasn't that hard to get access to well, even to a train that would take you to San Francisco or to
That's right.
Oakland or Berkeley, so it was pretty easy to go to bigger cities
Right.
and have a pretty urban life. Stepford here is in Connecticut. It is like the next biggest city is New York, and it seems to be
Yeah.
quite a drive in between.
Right.
It's you could do a day trip and people do, but like that's the day. That's what you're
Yeah.
doing.
Yeah.
So yeah, to me the suburbs are much more frightening. I don't live in a big city. I live in Milwaukee. I live in an urban area in a building, but the isolation that these women have, and like
Hmm.
um, Joanne has her friends in New York. She is able to try like the places she's selling her photographs are in New York. She can go get food and culture that she misses. And then she even makes a comment later in the movie when she meets the other men of this men's association, her husband Walter Snap Walter's like it's like you want to pay any of these guys anytime, like any attention. These are dorks who are dumb. You don't have anything in common with them. You would not hang out with them in New
I
York.
know.
That's all that's here,
Yeah.
And so you're hanging out with them now. Um, But I think for me, the big thing is just like it's how quickly the group gets formed, and like the mob mentality is not quite the word, but the elitism,
I
the
agree.
isolationism of like conformity. This is who can live here, and
Right.
the fear of something who isn't that. Like I always feel like I've had more privacy living in the city,
Yeah.
than the
Hmm.
suburbs.
And
If
then I,
someone thing even slightly odd happens in the suburbs, everyone hears about it. Especially if like next door, the app is a terrifying way to find out how racist your neighbors
oh my God, that
are.
Next Door would be a great horror movie, like for suburbia. I
Oh man, that
agree.
would be
And
yeah,
I agree. Like I think
yeah,
how quickly also the Joanna's husband immediately falls into the elitism trap, I guess,
mhm.
of the husband. He just does it blindsided by well, this is just the way that it is. Like the very much just accepting of the power dynamic, I guess, and like, well, anybody who's
Yeah,
anybody is in this club. And I think that they were kind of, I mean, certainly that was a commentary on his character, but like also it made it a lot more there was like a sinister aspect to him, like already brewing,
yeah,
like even from that little detail, which I really liked.
right. Because I think, and we should make it clear. The movie makes it abundantly clear pretty quickly. This is not her idea at all.
Hmm.
This was something that was kind of sprung on her pretty quickly, and he's giving the reasons of it's safer, etc. And like the first interaction we see them have is him being shitty to her, just saying, "Oh, you did a great job tidying up everything," and she's like, "How much time do you think I had?"
Hmm.
And we rarely see. I think there's only like one scene where he's actually being a dad, and he complains about like, "What am I supposed to do with all these kids?" Just like anything every woman on this town
Yeah,
does
yeah.
all
Hmm.
day, which I thought was a very on the nose but appropriate comment. But yeah, I'm under the impression I could have misinterpreted that Walter kind of already knows what is happening in Stepford, and that's why he wants to move there. That like,
Oh.
and I'm not sure how, but he kind of seems to have the expectation. Maybe I'm wrong. That this is why we gotta go here. Is
Ooh.
that's a plan, or at least he knows that there's something strange gonna happen, and he wants in on it. Because there certainly is a I need to belong to this group. I need
Right.
to belong to this men, which is very sad and sinister in many ways, like you said, because like it's so lonely. Like
Uh-huh.
the men who are in this group don't actually like each other, and their only commonality is that they've murdered their wives and replaced it with a robot, you
I
know,
know.
and so they have this quote unquote perfect life. But then you also don't have your romantic partner that you should hopefully have interest
Oh,
in.
wow.
And I don't know, more and more that there's blatant misogyny is in mainstream media with Andrew Tate, Jordan Peterson, and
Ugh,
people like this. It kind of becomes increasingly clear how commonly held these beliefs are of this is not a person, this is a function,
that's
a
right.
wife that is to many people. So I think the movie hits really hard with relevancy today, but I don't know. I think the Walter character, like, yeah, he is very bored. He starts
Hmm.
drinking quite a bit more when he gets there, but also goes through with it. Like, because it's not a right away thing that she's becoming a robot. There's some
Right.
strange, sinister things that kind of happen throughout there, and it seems to take a few months before this happens. So he has a lot of outs of not doing this.
And the tragedy is she actively well, she notices, first of all, just that
Hmm.
something is so off, and is there's a bit of activism actually, and like an attempt of a women's movement like in this town. It felt like a very like sincere portrayal of just these two kindred
Right.
women going to other women and
Her
saying,
and Bobby.
yes, her and her her like semi New York friend that's also there and is noticing or just doesn't fit in at all, needs an outlet. And Joanna's the one to say like,
Right.
well, we can talk to people. And I think that it almost, that's almost a tragedy for me. Like they really try, they talk to these women, and
Mhm.
and I just can only assume that's probably what happens in real life a lot of times, if like not the replacing
Yeah.
of wives part, but being turned away from those ideas, like
Right.
that's a very very quiet almost, but like a real tragedy that many women have probably experienced. So that's kind of hard.
Oh,
It was hard to
absolutely, yeah.
watch. Yeah.
Because it is like the consciousness raising effort that they're trying to have, that it kind of gets derailed very quickly, you know.
Hmm.
Because there's also like one of the Bobby's the other main character, who's like another great kind of spunky. This town sucks. Let's hang out and drink scotch,
Yeah.
and
Smoke.
kind of do our own thing. It's like, and they're having fun. Like, let's talk about culture, and then someone mentions to him that the town used to be quite liberal, and there was like a feminist group headed by all the people who were there, completely surprised to admit it, the people who were the most just baking all day and dealing with the kids, and seem to have no personality beyond that. And one of the first big signs here that like what's going on. And I think I knew the twist of this movie before seeing it. I'm not sure if you did, or not the twist. I knew what happened in it because it's a famous movie, but I think it does really work for a first time viewer. The pacing, if you haven't heard what it
Hmm.
is, I think it works really well. The slow, gradual reveal.
Hmm.
But did you know? And how did that work for you?
I mean, I didn't know like the end result, the specific there being their copies kind of thing. I mean, you know that like either some
Right.
sort of like mind control thing is going on, basically. Even
Sure.
like just the guise of the movie, it's kind of like you can pick that up pretty quickly. However, that's why I that was the surprising element to me, is like it to me it is a quasi monster movie, like I said in the beginning. Like it it makes it about
Right.
a tangible, it's not a psychological result. It's a some they're being, something is happening to them
Mm,
specifically. I'll say Don't Worry Darling is the same. Like that was a part of that was the kind of the twisty bit in Don't Worry Darling.
right.
So I hope you can muster through the two, like almost 3 hour movie that is, Seth, so we can talk about it because it's like worth it in some
Absolutely.
ways. But it's just,
Yeah.
I will preface it by saying, like, give yourself a good a good 3 hours.
Right.
But yeah, like it was a fun monster movie like twist to me.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about Don't Worry, Darling, real quick, because here's the concern. I mean, other than like it was a hilariously insane
Oh.
fiasco in post production with the permitting that is its own can of worms. But look that up. But Olivia Wilde, the director, who I really liked her first movie, Booksmart, is a very funny high school comedy.
I
And
didn't realize she was the director of
um,
that movie.
yeah, so it was kind of a strange change here. Like Booksmart is two female characters. It's a feminist, but it's a comedy. You know,
Mhm.
this is we're really talking about something serious.
It was a I agree. Like I think it was there were a couple swings and misses, I think, in terms of like her
Sure,
theming, and that's what people mentioned. And that I kind of saw as well. Like it's so hard because it's like these, well, and that she's, it's directed by a woman. It's there's certainly feminist themes going on, and
right.
it felt kind of indicative of, which was sad, like the time that we're in, that people were so critical of it, like so like well, this is like, just very very against it. Kind of really that it was,
Sure.
I felt like that it was attached to Olivia Wilde's name. Like I really like there had to have been, at least to a degree,
Yeah.
some of that going on. But like I said, I mean literally like, I'm glad that I got the ticket to watch it, but it's like um some passes of the script were literally felt like first drafts. Like I that was my biggest like problem with it.
Wow.
Just in terms of like the dialogue as well, that kind of stood out and just felt kind of
Mm,
strange. I was like, why? I couldn't believe
yeah.
that got passed. That's basically my takeaway from it. But
Okay.
conceptually, I mean, tons of inspiration, certainly, especially after watching Stepford Wives, like very, very similar stuff going
Sure.
on.
I mean, I'm always kind of curious to watch a movie that has good intentions but misses the mark. That's a fun, interesting experience,
Mhm.
in certain ways. And like you said, it sounds like it has some redeeming quality. I've heard the look of it is great for the
Yeah.
cinematography
Hmm.
and all that. So we'll somehow fit that into another episode. But
Okay.
another interesting thing that goes on in Stepford Wives, when we do have these attempts at trying to have these political conscious raising meetings with the women, is they just keep each woman who has already been there for a while, who's a established resident, kind of goes into a commercial for something. They start talking about this new cleaning product and how much time it saves them, or a flour that really just the biscuits rise even faster, and you wouldn't believe it. And there's a very strong consumer, rather anti-consumer capitalist thing happening in this movie too. And there's several shots where they're just kind of driving around town where you pass big conglomerate offices, like IBM type of
Hmm.
uh, offices that are out there. And so it's an interesting thing that like these women are not just programmed to be the perfectly submissive wife who will do all the things a man would not degrade himself to do in this world, but also to promote the companies probably that their husbands are running, you know, um, to be these kind of little commercials and to buy the specific brands. That's part of it, and that's frightening too. If it's like, well, how big do they want this to get?
Yeah.
This seems to be a widespread plans beyond Stepford. um,
Oh,
and it definitely does have the fear of like who all is in on this, because it seems to be larger than just this like eight or so guys in the men's association.
I feel like there were more references than I realized because that was a
Mm.
straight out of Truman Show for me. That like
Right,
they
yeah,
must have pulled from that. It was almost like shot to shot, as well. So that was really fun little snippet.
mhm. No, you're right. I forgot that that's definitely a has to be inspiration for Truman Show. We should do an episode on Truman Show. That's a great movie.
I know it's one of
Yeah.
my tops, and even in Truman Show too, it's that uncanniness of like
Hmm.
I think consumerism itself is kind of frightening in a way.
Yeah.
Marketing itself can be a really frightening concept because it is.
Right.
I mean, I was a marketing, my or communications, I should say minor, but we had a lot of marketing stuff, and it was fascinating that the goal is manipulation. Your goal is like
Mm.
psychological manipulation, that you need this thing, and
Yeah.
it's just really fun. Maybe the diabolical side of me is like I find it so interesting and fascinating to be able
Yeah.
to get in the consumer's head like that.
Right.
And but there that is diabolical as I say it.
It is.
So,
Yeah.
the concept in the movie, I like that they're playing on that as well. That is American diabolical things themes going on.
Right. Well, then we have the most diabolical of all, the revelation that the main person who's kind of designing this and heads up this program used to work for Disney
That
as a
was funny.
an Imaginarium. Right.
That's right.
That
Like
feels like a joke, a comment that would not be allowed
I
today.
I know. Lots of stuff like that going on. Like, little like jokes, I would say, throughout the whole thing that really add. I mean, it wasn't like to the level of that I feel like it was
Mhm.
parody or anything, but there was just a lot of little subtle things that if you know, it's kind of
Right.
like if you know, like you'll it added to the whole theme as a whole, and
Right.
that was where it shined also.
I feel like because like to me it was funny. It's like that just sounds like it'd be like a joke on The Simpsons. Like this evil mastermind here learned this at Disney, but it also like Disney's done horrible
I
things
know.
and is and it fits and it makes sense that this is like that this guy would be settled in this affluent suburb in Connecticut. you
That's
know.
right. And even the women are like,
Uh,
yeah, the weird Disney guy. Like it's kind of like or Joanna is like, yeah, that guy's so weird. He worked at Disney. And that's, I mean, you're
yeah.
right. Like it's not, it really felt like it wasn't in she's not in the main zeitgeist. She's just not about it. And comments like that helped a
Right.
lot to really show the separation.
Yeah. Absolutely. This also has, I think, like kind of the real horror thriller aspects kick in the last maybe 20-30 minutes here, and it is honestly, it reminded me of Nope quite
Ah,
a bit, and I understand it was an inspiration for Nope, but the moment of any horror thriller movie like that where the unassuming person starts fighting back is
mhm,
among my favorite experiences in any movie. And that's so satisfying and open. Here you do have her ultimately, maybe not killing but striking her husband with the fire stick poker
mhm,
to escape the house. And I thought just as in terms of like changing of tone here, where it's been kind of slow, sinister, to full on, the violence of that sequence really worked for me. And I can definitely see it be an inspiration for Nope. These, not Nope, sorry, Get Out. My apologies
oh, okay,
for
mhm,
these, this sinister suburb thing. Wrong movie. So yeah, I was very satisfied with this movie. It is currently free on Tubi,
yeah,
which, folks, if you aren't utilizing Tubi yet, check it out. It's wild that it's free and has such great movies on it. There's commercials, but it's free.
yeah,
I think my closing thoughts would just be this movie holds up quite a bit better than I expected, and it's kind of
mhm,
frightening to think about movies that are considered too extreme at the time that prove true, because this is certainly, I think, one of them. And honestly feels more relevant today than it maybe would have been, I don't say when it came out, but even like 15 years ago.
that's right.
Just again with having sexist, misogynist people who are very openly I am that and embracing it, who have a major social media following, or in some cases are on the actual media. It's terrifying how relevant this movie was, and it got me thinking about what movies are coming out now or soon that'll be considered too extreme and then later unfortunately be proven to be correct. So I don't have examples, but it's a frightening thought.
That's right. I couldn't agree like more, Seth. I kind of like somehow I was not as in tuned when I first watched it about I mean, you kind of are like the feminist element specifically,
Sure.
but I think also this does a lot of subtle things that really help just add to the frightening element. And well, even for me, it remind like some little like we talked about jokes or little like things that they added
Sure.
in that the people say. It almost reminded me of stuff that went on in Barbie, like the
Oh, sure. Yeah.
subtle jokes about I mean literally about patriarchy
Yeah.
and about that is a in this movie a horror, but in like in something like Barbie, like it's I think kind of a horror too, but all but a tragedy. Like there's also tragic elements to
Yep.
it. I felt like it was just a quiet homage to that or like recognition of that is hard to do, and here was done well, and I think in Barbie was done impeccably, um
Yeah.
and I think if you're like I just agree with what you took from it too, like if you saw Don't Worry Darling and it was like not, or I don't know, it's more like if you were kind of surprised like I was about the backlash of the the feminist aspect of Don't Worry Darling, I think do your due diligence and like
Mm.
see the arc of this cinematic theme of these feminist like feminist horror underdwellings, and watch Stepford Wives to see like how you feel about it, to see a better for me a better script a better script about it basically, honestly.
Absolutely. And we should say I fully agree with you about the unfair backlash to Don't Worry Darling being focused on Olivia Wilde's personal life. There's been many male directors who've done basically the same thing of having a relationship with a cast member while still married. I think was kind of the accusation. The timeline was unclear. It's like Ingmar Bergman's done that.
Yeah.
Many directors, Peter Don Bondage, very famously. It's not a new thing, and these reviews did not focus on it historically when it's been meant. So I think that is unfair, certainly, regardless of some things that the movie maybe gets wrong.
Mhm.
Well, with that, let's transition to our recommendations.
Sure,
I had
yes.
to pull up one of my.
I want to I know I'm kind of just I'm pivoting, I should say, from our
Mm,
feminist horror, which I really enjoyed. You know, I really briefly, I there was a A24 film called, oh my god, I'm gonna blank on the name. I think it was called, oh, it's called Men. It's literally called Men, I think.
yeah,
Marketed as a horror. I have not seen it yet. But from what I saw, like I may like throw that on the watch list because I think that it's, and from the marketing and everything, it's kind of pretty obvious that it's a bit of a feminist horror. It's A24, so I don't know why I have not seen it. I
Right.
think it has to be one that I'll probably watch, solo, in my life currently, and
Sure.
be really sad about it, or and feel some type of way about it for a while. So just want to throw that out there, that was an example that I saw recently, that if you're looking for feminist horror, that may be a good one, a recent feminist
Sure.
horror. I want to
It's
check
a
that out.
folklore we love here.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. I want to check that out myself. But pivoting a little to our fun spooky season that I'm in, that we're all
Sure.
in currently, every night is spooky night here in this household, and every day basically. And I think, I don't know how surprised Seth will be that I haven't seen this movie yet. But I had watched Young Frankenstein for the first time.
Oh, hell yeah. Yes.
Oh,
Okay.
that
I'm so glad.
so much fun, like right up my alley. I wasn't a huge Gene Wilder fan. He's incredible in this. Like, he was very magnetic,
You're the best.
and his delivery is
Yeah.
just perfect. He has like a very, I mean, obviously nostalgic quality, but there's just he's a star. Like, he just has some magnetism to him that's like very
Right.
I could all, he feels old timey, like he feels like a star from like the
Yeah.
1930s to me. And this movie feels it's certainly an homage to Original Frankenstein. It felt like a 1930s film, and it's made in the 70s.
Yeah.
Like, just so many really amazing cinematic, like, lore and love going on there, and just really fun vaudeville,
Yeah.
skits and stuff going on. I just adored it. I am so we have I was a tap dancer. We talk about putting on the Ritz was like a very common, tap song. And so I knew the song, and like
Right.
the weirdness kind of that he does with it. We had a cane and everything, and like, so I did that before. And
Mhm.
it was just so fun to see the original.
Right.
And that's the kind of like very
Yeah.
Hollywoodish, but like movie magic that just I love. So it was a great watch, perfect for Halloween.
I'm so glad to hear you like that movie. That was one of my favorite comedies for sure. I love Mel Brooks and his films. And that movie is so perfect because it does look so much like those James Whale 30s Frankenstein movies.
It was
And it's
amazing.
so lovingly done and so profoundly silly.
Yes.
Um, yeah, I'm so glad you hear you liked it. Yeah, it's
Hmm.
a great choice. Fantastic. I'm going a pretty different direction, but I'm so glad
I know.
that you chose that one.
I know I derailed
I'm
kind
going
of.
with
But
the no, not at all. It's perfect. The original Wes Craven, The Hills Have Eyes from 1977.
okay.
This is a movie that I love a horror movie that takes place in the desert, which is not a lot of, and this is one of those. But it's also a movie where I did not anticipate who would end up being kind of, I don't want to say our lead, but like the last man standing, the person who's making it. And basically it's people who are traveling through the desert, come across locals, and I won't say much more than that, and problems ensue. But it has, I think, what to me was one of the most terrifying shots, endings of movies, just because it is an act of violence from a person you don't expect, and the movie just ends very abruptly. You have this great commentary, I think, on how tame is the American family? How civilized are we actually when you have this suburban family interacting with these dangerous people who are attacking them, and who are we really? And some great commentary, I think, on nuclear family that is in no way similar to the Stepford Wives commentary, or it's very bold in what it says, I think. But really good.
I thank you for recommending that, Seth. For some reason, like, Wes Craven's films, like, I tend to like pass them up, especially in like because it was like well, maybe was it late 90s or like early
Sure.
2000s ish era, which we kind of talked about a little bit with our previous guest, is like
Yeah.
we kind of, that was sort of like a little bit of a down peak in terms of horror for the main stuff that was like coming out at that time. But I forget that there, I love to be reminded that there's like a lot of gems in there too. And Wes Craven for some reason was the name that like I would just I tended to like skip over,
Yeah,
I guess, it just for whatever reason. And so thanks for that recommendation. That sounds great.
sure. Because I think he had some night movies in the 90s and early aughts.
Okay.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah. His earlier stuff, I think, 70s, like Scream from the 90s is great as well. But yeah, I think going back to the same guys is a good call.
Mm-hmm.
All right, folks. Well, that's going to do it for us this time. If you haven't yet, go back and listen to our other spooky season episode from this year, Suspiria, with our friend Claudio Alberto Cortez. Really fun to have him on to talk about not just the original movie by Dario Argento, but the whole Giallo movement
Mm-hmm.
and kind of world history of horror in general. A fascinating guest we're very grateful to have on the show. So highly
Mm-hmm.
recommend that one if you are a horror fan and want to kind of broaden your horizons. I think we often when we get a guest on here, we end up getting like 8 or 10 recommendations just kind of throughout the episode. So great if you need to add some stuff to your watch list, check that out.
And Claudio, for me, the most amazing part, he gave this incredible like history lesson basically in what horror, what horror mirrors and stuff. And even quickly it reminded me of this film too, because it's like monster movies were in the 50s era were about, like, from what I gathered from him, were about 50s was about conformity, and
Mm-hmm.
and that's happening in I think that's happening in Stepford Wives too, obviously conformity, but the horror element is actually conformity in this one, is what I think. And more than just conformity, but that feminist
Yeah.
element as well. So appreciative of Claudio always, and fascinating, really important and a fun way to watch film if you're into it that way.
Absolutely. Well, folks, we have some more episodes coming out again soon, so stay tuned. And please follow us on Instagram specifically. Twitter's kind of dead, but we're still there. And if you haven't yet, give us that 5-star.
And let us know your spooky, what's on your watch list this season. It's always my favorite thing to hear.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. All right, folks. Take care.